For the last time, yes, we are brothers. Not me and Chara. Me and Greg Alba.
How did they know that we're not brothers, Jabby Koi?
I'm from Thailand.
I'm from Thailand!
Welcome, folks. I'm Jabby Koi, joined by Chara Kirk, not my brother. We're looking at the Real Rejects video, Doctor Strange 2, A Surprising Way Mutants Will Return in Multiverse of Madness, Marvel Film Theory. I know that Greg put a lot of heart, blood, sweat, and tears into this video, and he's very, very proud of it, and so I thought, I'll look at it and judge it for myself.
I'm actually very excited. I like the X-Men and stuff, and so I'm very, very cautiously optimistic and excited for the possibility of mutants in the MCU. Anyway.
So, thank you, The Real Rejects, for allowing myself and Chara Kirk to react to this. So if you guys haven't already subscribed to The Real Rejects, they're on their way to 1 million subscribers. And so subscribe to them. There's a link in the description below if you want to click on that link and give the original video an upvote, please. Thanks so much. Here we go.
What is going on there, Reject Nation? Greg here today to talk about Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Specifically, I wanted to jump in on the conversation about mutants. A lot of people are speculating that mutants will finally be introduced through this movie, and I have a theory that may sound a little far-fetched at first, but if you stick with me on this journey, you'll see where I'm coming from.
Oh.
Hopefully. So if you guys could go ahead and hit that like button, I'd very much appreciate it. And let's just dive right into this. So before even the Fox merger even happened, the big question has been, when will mutants come into the MCU? There's been a lot of popular theories floating about. One theory being Thanos' snap created mutations in human genes. Another popular theory is that the Eternals already set up mutants because in the comics, the genetic experiments that the Celestials performed created the X gene. And another popular theory I was hearing going about was that the dreaming Celestial at the end of the movie, the energy emitted from that Celestial kickstarted the mutant gene. Now, after Eternals, we still haven't heard anything about mutants. What has been like the common theory for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness? Mutants will be introduced via the multiverse, and then through a series of cataclysmic events, it will result in presumably Wanda Maximoff, aka the Scarlet Witch, essentially rewriting parts of the MCU timeline in which mutants do exist, presumably the Fox X-Men universe, opening the door for essentially a multiversal rewrite or reset, allowing the birth of mutants to exist within the main universe. So in short,
that makes
would be a
reversal
from what happens in the House of M comics. You might have heard this comic brought up a lot. In that comic, Scarlet Witch is the main threat, and in the end of the story, she blames mutants for the world's problems. Using her reality-bending abilities, she declares the famous words, "No more mutants." So the common theory is that this movie would end essentially in a reversal of that with like a let there be mutants, which sounds cool. That sounds fine. But my theory is this. What if the MCU timeline we've been watching for the last 13 years, No More Mutants, has already happened? Like I said, I know this sounds like a bit of a reach. However, I think this would answer some questions we've had about the MCU. Questions specifically regarding the events of WandaVision. I think it would better help reintroduce X-Men and mutants into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And with this phase after WandaVision, Loki, even the trailer for Moon Knight, this is called Multiverse of Madness. This is the mind-bending phase of the MCU. What more of a mind-bender would it be than to reveal to us that mutants were already there and that the actions of the Scarlet Witch erasing the existence of mutants already happened? Dive into this with me. Spider-Man No Way Home. That showed us it's possible to erase people from the world's memory, including Doctor Strange, via forgetting who Peter Parker was. Spoilers for Spider-Man No Way Home. What if this movie takes it the next step further? Since WandaVision was announced, everyone has been looking to the House of M comic book as like the go-to source material to better understand and perhaps predict what might happen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, that's an important comic, but the comic that I'd recommend looking into is actually one of the follow-ups to House of M, X-Men Endangered Species. In that comic, after the existence of mutants has already been reduced from millions to only hundreds around the world, Hank McCoy, aka Beast, sets out on a journey to find a way to reverse the spell Wanda cast. And along this journey, he eventually meets up with Doctor Strange, who tells him exactly this. What she did completely changed reality, that it's nearly impossible to see where reality ends and her alteration of it begins.
Wow.
She casts her spell over billions of souls, over worlds and dimensions.
Wow.
Reality has been consumed by her spell. The magic is woven through everything, welded to all there is. So in the source material itself, Doctor Strange declares her spell affected worlds and dimensions, i.e. the multiverse. I tried rhyming that, it didn't quite work. So the main rumor, ever since this movie was announced at Comic-Con, is that Wanda Maximoff will be the main villain of this movie. And another rumor that's been circulating is that the Illuminati might be featured in this movie, and they would essentially act as protectors of the multiverse, who are here to stop multiversal threats. With this being a Doctor Strange movie, with the few appearances that we got of Scarlet Witch, and a movie about traveling the multiverse, why would Wanda Maximoff be considered the ultimate threat to the multiverse? Is it because the Illuminati believe in witchcraft lore? I don't think so. Maybe this is the real reason why Agatha Harkness, who once possessed the Darkhold, which grants access to the multiverse, told Wanda, "You're supposed to be a myth." So am I saying that we're in some repeated time loop where the Wanda we've been with the whole time has already done this? No, I'm not saying that. Loki has already introduced us to variants. So as we saw in the setup of that show, a variant of our protagonist was considered a multiversal threat. So what if in another universe, the events of Wanda Maximoff being brought to the breaking point of mutants already played out, and she declared no more mutants, affecting all the timelines, especially the one that we've been watching for the last 13 years. Spider-Man No Way Home showed us that just because variants exist does not mean they are running on exactly the same timeline. Case in point, Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker, for sure his character is a lot older than Tom Holland's Peter Parker. This could be a similar thing with Wanda Maximoff, just in another universe. With the powers the Scarlet Witch possesses, her ability to warp reality, combine that with the ending events of Loki, where all the timelines were starting to intersect and began crossing paths, just went into chaos. That could explain why some things in WandaVision registered to her as familiarity, which were brand new to us, even to her. For example, the WandaVision series will lead us to believe that Tommy and Billy were just something she imagined up, that she gave birth to, and in like a week went from babies into these preteens, and for some reason stopped growing at that specific age. Yet, when she's using the Darkhold at the end of WandaVision, accessing the multiverse, she hears Tommy and Billy crying out for her. Essentially, the show's way of telling us these children are not purely imagination, but in fact, real children. Her mind could be connected to a variant of herself.
Oh, I never thought about that. That's actually a very, very interesting thought.
Yeah.
Like that the children that she conjured up weren't just out of her imagination, but from another universe entirely.
No, I mean, that thing, I'm like, yeah, I can buy that. But the thing that makes me go, is like her connection with her other variants, you know, because...
But still, that's a very, very interesting thought, yeah.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I imagine that because she's magical as well and she has access to all of that, that it's not outside of the realm of possibility that she could have a special connection with her variants. I mean, Loki is also magical, right? But it didn't really feel like he had that same level of connection.
Not at all. And I think that Wanda might quite possibly have powers that are well beyond even her own comprehension.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
she's supremely powerful.
That was established. Like, she didn't know everything in her own show, like with the symbols in order to trap
Agatha Harkness.
In order to trap Agatha, she had to create those symbols.
Yeah.
I forget exactly what the rules were with it, but she didn't know about that before Agatha introduced it to her.
Yeah.
Right? And
she's a quick study, though.
Correct. And so what I'm saying is, I think she's just breaking the surface. Or just cracking the surface of what her possible powers are.
Yeah, and she's been exploring the Darkhold.
Yeah.
So now, going into the Multiverse of Madness, she probably knows a lot more and is a lot more in tune with her powers.
Yeah.
More mutants in order to be connected to a variant of herself that already declared no more mutants, in order to have a rewritten life so she could have the family she wanted. A line that stood out to us in that show was when she tells her children,
"Thanks for choosing me to be your mom."
Isn't it just a little bit odd that if she does traverse the multiverse, find Tommy and Billy, that they are indeed exactly like how she imagined in our universe? And even take Evan Peters showing up in WandaVision.
That is peculiar.
As frustrating as it was to learn that he's just some guy called Ralph Boner, believe me, I didn't like that either. But I thought about it some more. When he shows up at their doorstep, she instantly recognizes him, despite the fact that he looks and behaves totally different than Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Oh man, that's actually a really good point.
Yeah.
That's actually a really good point. Yeah, her connection to the multiverse must be really, really, really strong. Especially with the reference he's pulling from the comics. I'm like, oh yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. The fact that she just instantaneously recognized him like that, the only logical explanation is what he's explaining here.
Or, well, there's that, or she just created him in that way.
No, but he's the Quicksilver from the Fox.
Yeah. If we want to make that connection, then yes, that absolutely makes sense what you're saying.
It's just weird because it has to be a thing that she was not aware of. That's the only way that this makes sense.
Well, yeah, I suppose you could say that it's like a subconscious connection.
Yeah.
You know, that she just knows in her heart, even if her brain isn't really fully registering it.
I wish they dropped clues of that along the way in the show rather than just right at the end. Just something to sort of indicate where all of this is coming from, because a lot of the show spent time on these sort of goofy subplots that it's just like, okay, it's another show. It's in the 90s now. Like, all right, I get it. And I felt like they spent too much of the show. I mean, I know that a lot of people really, really love WandaVision, but for me, I felt like it was bogged down by the need to comply with this contrived structure.
Yeah.
You know, and I was hoping they were going to get away from that by episode 3 or something like that, but they just kept sticking with it for a while. It would have been cool to discover more of what Greg's talking about here through the course of the show. But I mean, better late than even later, so.
Recognizes he is indeed Pietro. We come to find out it's not, but Agatha needed someone that upon Wanda seeing would instantly recognize as her brother. Even though Wanda at one point questions, why do you look different? She still recognizes him as her sibling. Maybe perhaps she's connected to a variant version of herself where her brother looks like Evan Peters. Maybe the Fox universe. Here's where I'm coming from. To introduce mutants into the MCU, it's a major change up and would drastically affect the timeline if they wanted to adhere to the source material. If it was like, mutants now exist, now we gotta like kind of do some of the prejudice allegories that comic draws. So like, even though the MCU does deviate from source material, the mutants have been around since practically like the beginning of time, and they grew to be more known to the world by the 20th century. And in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we've already had events like Avengers Endgame, where countless heroes, many with superpowers, super beings, came together to defeat a universe doom threat. A big part of bringing mutants to the big screen, like you just have to have this if you're gonna bring mutants, is dealing with the hatred humans have against mutants, dealing with the racism allegories. Now in the MCU, after all these super beings have done for us and just how much they're celebrated, I'm just having a hard time wrapping my head around the thought of humanity just suddenly singling out mutants specifically if they were to be introduced as brand new beings into the MCU timeline. Plain and simple, you just can't do mutants without the inclusion of the prejudices it presents. So maybe the way to handling it is restoring the mutants into the MCU, causing everyone to remember their animosity towards mutants before the legendary words of I am Iron Man. Well, I just don't think it's that far-fetched of a plan. Any more so than like, let's just smash multiverses together and then create mutants. Kevin Feige, the man of many secrets, unusually unveiled a while ago the alternate post-credit scene for Iron Man. So this is like something kind of like out of the ordinary for the guy to do. And everything he says and does presents is so intentional. And in that post-credit scene, one thing that Nick Fury says is this:
as if gamma accidents, radioactive bug bites, and assorted mutants weren't enough.
Why would Kevin Feige unveil their original plan to us? Maybe because he was hinting that mutants were already there. The original post-credit scene, which was actually scripted and filmed, indicated that there are mutants living amongst us in hiding. Some believe that perhaps the best way to introduce mutants would be they've been in hiding and now feel comfortable to come out. But mutants come in the form of millions, not just a few who are band together, like hiding like the Eternals. Sounds to me like that original post-credit scene would line up with the idea that there are currently only hundreds of mutants and not millions of mutants, just like House of M. Anyway, guys, that's just my little film theory for today. And that's just a theory. A film theory. Yeah, guys, what do you think? Tell me how ridiculous it sounds. Tell me if you think it sounds plausible at all. What's your theory of how mutants will come into the MCU? Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. Catch you guys soon.
That was cool.
Oh, yeah, that was really cool. I mean, it definitely makes you think about stuff, and I feel like that's not really a theory that I've kind of heard before, especially this like
it seems so painfully obvious now.
House of M situation.
Yeah, but it seems so like duh.
Yeah.
Like, how did we not consider that before?
Yeah, because it wouldn't make sense for people to get all mad and riled up about mutants when it's like, yeah, but we've had superheroes and no one's mad about that. So I can't see that being a thing.
There was the Geneva Convention. There was a whole thing. Yeah.
I mean, there was that, but yeah, I don't know. I just feel like people are used to the superheroes at this point in the MCU, and so if suddenly it was like, oh, and now there are mutants.
The part I thought he was going to mention was that, you know, we had this end of the universe sort of epic fight that took place on Earth against Thanos. That would be like the prime opportunity for mutants to show up, and they didn't. You know what I mean?
Right.
I thought he was going to mention that. That would support the theory that we are living in the timeline where Wanda took them out of existence.
Yeah.
I like this a lot. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah.
A couple of notes.
Oh.
So, I told Greg I would give him my feedback.
Did he expect you to give it to him in a video or like in a phone call?
I'm sure he doesn't give a shit.
Okay.
One thing I would say is Greg is very, very well known for his sense of humor. And I thought is one thing that was lacking from this video was his sense of humor. Because it kind of like Joss Whedon, not to bring up someone that is now disliked, but
Right.
his whole thing is always like, you know, when you're telling your story, please, for the love of God, tell a joke. That's why there's so much humor in the MCU because of his influence, right?
Sure.
And I think that this video could have used that, where just every now and then, just like even Screen Crush does that, where he's just like cut away to his dog or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like some kind of joke just to break it up, because otherwise it's just a lot of data. Buy a pop filter.
Yeah, I was wondering if you're going to mention that.
Greg, buy a pop filter so that you can do your bub and puzz, you know, when it doesn't like over. You want to explain that?
Oh yeah, plosives, y'all. I did that very softly, but like, yeah, a plosive is with a P sound, the B sounds, and you know, when you like expel a lot of air into a microphone that's very sensitive, it can hurt your audience's
Yeah,
ears.
especially if you're using headphones. But one trick is if I say explosion, I'll just soften the P in the explosion, or I'll say explosion out here so it's not right on the microphone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it still sounds all right. I thought his face looked a little hot, like it was overexposed. I think it was overexposed and he tried to dial back the exposure in post. He's like, oh shit, it looks too... But like there's a certain look to it when something's overexposed and recorded on these digital cameras that
Yeah.
are not raw video, you know?
Yeah, it's
So,
hard. It's hard to bring it back.
It's hard to fix it.
Yeah.
Anyway, those are my notes. That's it.
Those are technical notes.
Yeah, those are technical notes, but like in general, I thought the information was actually really, really cool.
Yeah, I thought it was like really creative in thinking outside of the box and
Yeah.
in researching it. Like I could tell a lot of hard work had been put
Yeah.
into the video and supporting it with evidence, as it were.
I think that maybe Greg should have found a way to introduce a hint of what he was ultimately gonna drive at the 6-minute mark, because it wasn't until the 6-minute mark where I was like, oh, mind blown, right? But there's a lot of information you have to get across before you can support that idea.
Oh,
you see what I'm saying?
Sure, yeah. To set up the thesis earlier on.
Exactly.
I thought he had though.
Oh, maybe he did, and it just
said
sort
it
of
was
went over
like
my head.
a reverse Dr. M situation, but it wasn't really until he started explaining more that we were like, oh.
Yeah, well, yeah. When he was started
Yeah.
pulling clips from the show and like showing lines that were spoken, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah. You know, I needed a moment like that at the 1 minute or 2 minute mark, because I was thinking, like, if I was not Jabby, Greg's brother, would I keep watching past the 3 minute mark?
Mm-hmm.
I did wonder about that, but it's at the 6 minute mark where I'm like, okay, you got me now. Now I need to watch the rest.
That
of
was
this.
very interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, those are my feelings. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the reaction. Hopefully you enjoyed the original video. Please, please, please give the original an upvote and make Greg happy.
Yes. Subscribe to The Real Rejects.
Yes.
If you haven't done so already.
Exactly.
Yes, so you can see more great content and tell Greg how much you enjoyed it so he can make more.
I enjoyed it, Greg.
Yes, very good. Well done.
On a scale of 1 to 10,
It's an 11.
it was definitely one of those numbers. I'm Jabby Kuwait. This is
Achara Cook.
Peace out.